Welcome to the TJ Mauldin Leadership Podcast, where we talk about life, leadership, and the gospel.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the TJ Mauldin Leadership Podcast. We always talk about life, leadership, and the gospel. And let me just say this from the very beginning today. Our team has been working incredibly hard on delivering consistent content to you. So if you could like, subscribe, share your favorite episode, that would mean so much to it would mean so much to me. It would mean so much to the team. And yeah, we hope you're loving the content that we're providing. Listen, today I want to talk about something that for me, it was, I think awkward's even probably the wrong word. I was a little shook. All right. That's what that word probably fits the moment best. I was on social media not long ago, maybe a couple months. And you know how, like, if you're just scrolling through, sometimes you're just like, your brain's not even involved. You're just kind of scrolling through social media and like you'll end up chasing some rabbit trail on TikTok or Instagram. And all of a sudden, I was kind of in one of those moments where I'm just scrolling and I see this water and there's all this thrashing going on. And I watch you guys know, you've heard me talk. I watch hunting videos, fishing videos. And so like at first I'm like, man, this is really weird. And there's some tint to the water. And then I scroll just a little bit further down and it says, man dies by shark attack. And it was in this moment where I was like, man, this isn't some action video. This isn't a movie. I kind of took this deep breath and I looked at my phone and I was like, I'm watching someone die. And it was when I'm telling you, it was just this kind of like this heaviness draped over me in that moment. But I had this immediate thought. I'm like, okay, I'm literally watching this person die. But then in the video, there's all these other people standing around watching this shark attack take place. And this is the thought that hit me. Someone was on their cell phone recording this person dying rather than jumping in to save them. And this thought grabbed a hold of me in a way that, y'all know I think all kinds of stuff all the time. I'm always trying to bring you content and information and little nuggets that I pick up here and there. But in that moment, I thought, man, how often is this true in my daily life? How often do I see people that are struggling or see people that need encouragement or see people that need to be celebrated, and rather than being a participant in their recovery or being a participant in their well-being or being a participant in their discipleship or being a participant in their coaching, I'm really just a spectator watching to see how this plays out. Man, I thought about this, like, how would you feel if you're that person and a year passes or 2 year passes and you realize, like, man, I stood there and held a cell phone when I could have dove in the water. And so you say, well, TJ, what in the world are you talking about? I went down this rabbit trail in my own heart, my own mind. I thought, man, why would you stand there? All right. And think about it this way: husband, dad, boss, leader, pastor, friend, whatever it is. Why would we stand on the perimeter or the margin of someone's life and watch them go through an attack, watch them go through an addiction, watch them go through suffering, watch them go through moral failure or failure in general? They're struggling. Maybe it's even homework or whatever, something that what would seem that trivial. Why would we stand on the edge and watch it happen and not get involved? And this is what I realized. Everyone standing around the ocean that day watching that guy die, they saw their life as more valuable than the risk. The risk was too great. I mean, bare minimum, here's the superficial risk. If I get in this water, their blood's going to be on my hands, literally. Like, the messiness of this situation is too much for me. The grotesqueness, the fearfulness of this situation is too much for me. So I'm not going to dive into this moment. I'm going to stand here and see how it plays out. Man, I sure hope he can wrestle this shark. I hope he can get away, but I don't want to get my hands messy. I think in life sometimes we stand back from people's lives, or we hang out on the peripheral, we hang out in the margins because we recognize that what they're going through is messy, and for us to possibly save them would mean that we have to get messy too. That we have to enter in or walk into their mess. Listen, Scripture tells us in the Bible, bear one another's burdens. In doing so, you fulfill the law of Christ. Like, there is this call and this mandate, and you guys always know that I'm going to talk to you from a Christian perspective because I'm a Christian and I love the Bible, and like that's what I'm called to do. Like, I'm called to bear burdens. I'm called to get my hands dirty for the sake of the gospel, and you are too. So like, you're not called just to be a participant in the lives of your friends or even in the lives of your coworkers. And some of you are like, oh no, I'm going to be a great leader and I'm not going to get involved in the personal lives of my employees. And I'm like, well, you don't love them. You don't really care for them. And I'm going to get to this on how they're of really low value to you in a minute, if that's your perspective. But that's when everything changed for me. And I'm going to kind of tease our way through this a little bit, but the reason that we would not dive in is because either it's too messy or it's too difficult or it would cost us something. There is no doubt that someone standing on the shore that day looked in on the water and said, you know what? I can swim really well. And this is what's crazy. Are you ready for this? There were people standing around that were able-bodied people, probably some good fighters, right? Probably some strong men, strong women, and probably some great swimmers. They had all the tools to get him out of the situation, but none were willing to risk their lives. None were willing to pay a price to save him. I think in our lives that the reason we shut down sometimes is, and you say, TJ, this is this major commitment or this major cost, but really sometimes it's just the cost of our time. Sometimes it's the cost of our discomfort. Sometimes it's the cost of our hobby so that we can invest in our children more, or the cost of our wants so we can invest in our spouse more, or you know what I'm saying? Like the cost of my preferences. So like, it's not my preference. Can I just be real with everybody? It's not my preference to like do dishes or to do laundry. I don't enjoy those things. But there are moments that like my wife, man, she is superwoman in so many ways. But there's more, and Ryan and I were having a conversation. He's one of the podcast curators here that helps us with the video. You're watching it. We were having this conversation today, like just realizing that, you know what, some of the, like a way that I can jump into my wife's life and serve her and love her and like make sure that she doesn't go under, that's to do things like the cost is that I have to do things sometimes that I don't want to do or I don't enjoy doing. And guys, listen, that's good leadership. That's real love. That's real masculinity, right? Like we were even having that conversation, like built this conversation. We live in a world of Andrew Tates, right? We live in a world where we have this bravado, hyper aggressive masculinity, which listen, I love that. I'm a masculine guy. I'm a man's man. I love the outdoors. I love hunting. I love fishing. All those things don't necessarily make you masculine, but I love masculinity. I think it's amazing. I think it's God's gift to the world through man. In the same way that I think femininity is through women, God's gift to the world through a woman. But the idea is that some of the most masculine things, some of the most powerful things that I can do is to count the cost in my own life and give up my time or give up my comfort or give up my preferences so that I can help somebody else get out of the shark's mouth. And that's what it comes down to. We're not willing to do that. Like there are so many times that I'm like, I don't want to give up my time. I don't want to give up my preference. I don't want to give up what I want. And I've been that guy that has been content. I'll just say this. I'll be a little vulnerable. Or transparent. I have been content at times. My wife is literally superwoman. She's so amazing. But there have been times that I've just wanted to check out and do me, go on my hunting trip, do my thing. And there are moments that she's been in the shark's mouth that all I would have had to do is stop, dive in, and she would have got a moment of rest or respite. And I've been a selfish husband before because I didn't want to risk. I didn't want to enter into the mess or enter that difficult moment with her. Man, like obviously I've had to repent and apologize and like I aim to be that better husband. But that changes when you recognize that the second reason, like, okay, so first is the cost and the fear, the risk of that relationship or the risk of that moment, stepping into that burden, stepping into that messiness, stepping into that hardship. But the second thing would be this: what they really communicated when they were standing around the beach while that dude was dying is that his life was of low value to them. I started thinking about this. I'm like, their inactivity was a declaration of his low value in their lives. Because as a dad, as a husband, I began to think, all right, if that was Tay, if that was Lizzie or Cameron, if that was my kids or my wife in the water with the shark, would I be standing there holding a cell phone? Like, and obviously, like the duh answer, right, is like, no, you would, if it's somebody that you love, that you ascribe value to. I mean, if it was my Meemaw, y'all, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm diving in the water, I'm Michael Phelps swimming to that beast, and I'm doing something. I might lose an arm, but I'm gonna be involved in the struggle. Why? Because they're not just means to an end. They're not low value people to me. And sometimes in life, we ascribe low value to people. So we're like, you know what? I'm content being a spectator. Let the shark have them. I'll just accept this as collateral damage. And hear me say this. There are some leaders out there. There are some pastors. There are some teachers, some businessmen. You have looked at people in your organization or underneath your leadership as acceptable collateral damage. And rather than stepping into the mess with them and loving them well, helping them and leading them up, you've just allowed them to die. And what you want to say is, what's easy to say is, oh, they're just not a hard worker, or they didn't have the quote unquote it factor. But the reality is, you and I at times have not taken the time to stop and dive into the attack or dive into the moment, add value to their life and lift them up. I'll tell you a story, and I know he will not mind me sharing this, but Matt Howell, a good friend of ours here at the church, he's the youth pastor. He asked me last week, he just became our lead youth pastor. So that's actually not a title here. I don't know why I said that. He is our youth pastor. And he came on as an intern. He was a school teacher. But over the summer, one summer, he came on as an intern, and then he came on as a student ministry associate. And in Matt's first couple years, it was really hard for Matt to find his footing, transitioning from the corporate world to ministry life and some of the freedoms that come with ministry life, and also some of the demanding hours and demanding seasons that come along with ministry, and how you really have to fight for your family because it's vying for your time. And he asked me this question the other day because, you know, there was a time where he and I even had real conversations of like, man, the interim leaving your name is dependent on, you know, you hitting some home runs and you stepping up in some areas. And he asked me this question the other day. He said, obviously when he became youth pastor, I said, Matt, I'm just really proud of you. I've seen you step up in so many ways and really begin to walk in your calling with a renewed passion, and there's an excellence and a drive. And he asked me this question. He said, TJ, he said, why 3 years ago, when I was dropping the ball and I was striking out, why did you risk? Why did you take the risk? And he said this about our youth pastor at the time too. He said, why did you and Kenny take the risk on me? And when I was thinking about this podcast, I thought about that conversation because I said, man, at the end of the day, and this is how I operate, and my team would say this, people are not a means to an end for me. Like, I want to work with my friends, and I deeply love the people that I work with. And the answer is love. Like, I love him like a brother. And if you're a guy on staff, I love you like a brother. If you're a girl on staff, I love you like a sister. Like I want to see you win as a person. So I want to do everything in my power to see you succeed and see you win. And so that's diving into the mess. That's having the hard conversation. So here's the question to ask. Are there people in your life that you're just spectating? You're just looking in on from the outside. You're watching them crash and burn. You're watching them make some repeated, poor choices or develop some poor habits. What will it take for you? Here's the question. What will it take for you to love them enough to dive into the water with them? Because that's really what it comes down to. Like, do you ascribe value to this person? And if you do, you love them. And if you love somebody, you'll jump into the mess with them. You won't just be the guy with a cell phone when the shark attacks. You'll be in the water helping them go free. Proverbs 31, 8 and 9 says, speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of all who are destitute. Speak up. and judge fairly, defend the rights of the poor and the needy. Like for some of you, let me just say this. Don't just be a spectator in your son and daughter's life. Don't just try to be the friend that hangs out on the peripheral and lets them do their thing and lets them go out and sow their wild oats, all that crap we talk about, right? Like don't be that parent. Be a parent that's willing to dive in the water. Listen, don't just be a spectating spouse. Like don't allow your spouse just to be a means to an end for you. Like speak up for them. Speak to them, dive in the water with them, carry their burdens. Don't allow yourself to get into this thing like, well, my kids exist for me and my spouse exists for me and for my benefit and for my good. No, like dive in the water, drop the cell phone, stop spectating, be a participant in the lives of your family. And I say the same thing in the lives of your friend groups and the people that you lead on your team and your volunteers and your employees. Get involved in their life or stop trying to lead. Like that would be my encouragement. I'm like, that sounded like very demanding, right? But seriously, at some point, we have to decide, are people a means to an end, or are we going to be a part of their lives and for their sake and for their good? Like they're going to be someone that I want to see win. I want to enable, I want to equip, I want to maybe not enable in a negative way, but enable them to get to where God's called them to be. I want to equip them to be who they can be. And sometimes that's messy, sometimes that's difficult, and it will always cost me something, but it's worth it because, and this is where the shift was for me. When I was watching that video, I recognized that life is fragile and people are a gift. And like my takeaway, when I thought, man, why would I dive in to save my daughter? Why would I dive in to save my wife? Because I know their lives are fragile. And if they were facing a shark, I know that it would be the end of them if I did not intervene. And heck, it may be the end of both of us if I do intervene. But if they're a gift to me, if I see them as a gift, and I know that life is fragile, I'm not going to stay inactive. I will not be content with inactivity. So here's the question, and this is what, man, this is what I'm asking of myself, about my staff, about my team, about my family. Do I see my friends as a gift to my life? Do I see the employees that God has trusted in my watch care as a gift? Do I see my congregation as a gift? Listen, you guys know I own a gym here in town. Do I see every paying member, right, as a means to an end for my success? Or do I look at these people and say, man, these people are a gift that I get to serve with customer service. I get to serve with care. I get to serve with helping them, live their best life and get in that beach body shape or whatever it is, right? Like, are these people, and whoever they are, fill in the blank, your family, your spouse, your wife, do I see them as a gift to me? Listen, that by itself will rearrange our whole thought process. And then we recognize this, that life is fragile. In an instant, this dude went from swimming in the water to being gone. And so if I look around and I recognize that sometimes, and when I say life, I'm not just talking about the physical, this muscle that's pumping in our chest that when it stops, like we check out, but their emotional life is fragile. Their confidence is fragile. Their life, the time that I have with my kids, that's fragile. It's passing every day. The time that I have with my spouse is passing. I told her the other day, we've been married 12 years, y'all, and I said, I wrote her this little poem the other morning, and I titled the poem 100 Years Sadness, 100 Years of Joy. And I said, I think what makes me most sad when I think about 100 years is that I don't have 100 years to spend with you. And I said, we've only been married for 12 years. I said, but I'm 38. We're only going to get to do this like 3 or 4 more times, 4 times if we're lucky, and we'll be like gum and grits, you know what I'm saying? Putting the dentures on the counter at that point, but like, and maybe I just got a crazy mind, y'all, you know that, but like I'm sectioning my marriage into, okay, we've been together 12 years. So in 12 years from now, or 30, yeah, that's 50. All right. Then, I'm like, we only get to do this over again about 3 or 4 more times. And that's if God is very gracious with no sickness and no diagnosis. And we get to live these long, healthy lives. And I just kind of took this breath. I'm like, man, life is fragile, and my wife is a gift. Life is fragile, and my team is a gift. Life is fragile. My employees, my friends, my teammates, my volunteers, they are a gift to me. So now, because I know that life is fragile, and they are a gift. Listen, that knowing that and centering in on that will give us three things, and I'm going to give you these to you really, really quick. Three things that I believe will enable us to move from apathy and inactivity to being courageously involved in people's life with compassion and commitment. And those are the three things. When you recognize that life is fragile and people are a gift, you have the courage to get out of your comfort zone and get into their life. That's what everyone lacked standing on the beach that day, was courage. There was nobody brave enough to wade into the water. And so that's one of the things in leadership. If we want to be a good leader, we want to be a good coach, we want to be a good spouse, we want to be a good parent, we have to have the courage to launch, the courage to have hard conversations, the courage to celebrate others more than we celebrate ourselves, the courage to risk the relationship and risk rejection and dive in the water and take the chance, take the risk. At some point, we just have to cultivate courage. So can I just tell you this today? I give you permission to be brave. I just want to give you some permission to be brave. Be courageous today. Like, you are fearfully and wonderfully made by the God of all creation. Listen, the one who breathed out the galaxies designed you. Have courage. Be brave. Step out into the water and serve somebody, love somebody, coach somebody, bring somebody up. They were lacking courage that day, and they were lacking compassion. They might have felt fear and scared, but I began to think, like, man, and like I say, my mind always goes down these rabbit holes, but I'm like, that guy in the water was somebody's brother or son or uncle or nephew or father or whatever it is, and there was no compassion. Like, there was no, I'm going to do whatever it takes to serve this guy and love this guy and lead this guy back to a safety. There was a lack of compassion. So if you want to be a great leader, if you want to not just be a spectator, but you want to be really engaged in the people's life that are a gift to you, have the courage to take the step to get involved in their life, and then have compassion to sit with them in the mess, to sit with them in the hardship, to sit with them in the moment. And here's the last one. Commitment, courage, compassion, and commitment. All it would have taken is one person to commit, right? Or think about this. Say there's 15 people on the beach, and there were a lot of people in this video watching this go down. What if all 15 would have dove in together? Surely they could have taken on the problem. So maybe this is what your team needs from you. Maybe this is what your spouse needs from you, your kids, your little league team. I don't know, whatever position of leadership you're in. Maybe they just need someone to be courageous in their life. And for your leadership to go to the next level, for your love to go to the next level, maybe you just need to be a little more courageous, a lot more compassionate, and develop a real sense of commitment. Those are the three things I want to gift you with today. That's the question that I want to ask you. Have you considered that the people in your life are a gift to you, and that life is fragile, time is passing? And if you know that, when are you going to have the courage to show them compassion and be deeply committed to see them win, to see them free, to see them set up to exceed, whatever that looks like? Listen, I know that you can. Let me say it this way today. I know that for some of you who are not brave and you're scared, I know that God can give you that courage. I know that God can cultivate in your heart compassion. And I know for some of you that, like, man, you're flaky, right? Like, you're an uncommitted person. God can give you a desire to be committed and to be committed to see other people win. And so ultimately, listen, don't be a spectator. Be involved. Don't use people as a means to an end. Speak up for them. Speak to them. Have courage, compassion, commitment, and watch God do some unimaginable things in your life and in your leadership. Listen, like always, I'm so glad that, I'm glad that you hang out with me while I sit here and I process. I say this all the time, but like, I really am just processing all of these things that, like, I'll see something, I'll think about it, I'll be like, man, I really want to talk about this with somebody. And, it gets to be you guys. So I really appreciate you sitting with me and processing this stuff with me. If this has meant something to you, or if there's an episode that meant something to you, like I always say, it would mean a great deal to our team. If you would like it, subscribe, share it, review it, shoot us an email, TJ Mauldin Leadership Podcast @gmail.com. We would love to get back with you. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. See you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the TJ Mauldin Leadership Podcast, where we talk about life, leadership, and the gospel. If you enjoyed this episode, share with a friend. For more content, follow us on Instagram and YouTube. If you have any questions you would like to ask TJ, whether it is about life, leadership, or the gospel, you can email those to tjmauldinleadershippodcast@gmail.com. Thank you again for listening, and we hope you join us again on the TJ Mauldin Leadership Podcast.